Hello, welcome to Avalara's talk on the role of enterprise SaaS in the era of AI. Uh, this ends up being extremely topical here in February of 2026. Very excited to have this conversation. If you have any questions at all during the talk, please pop them into the Q&A section and we'll be happy to respond to you directly. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Anders Knox, Director, Strategic Partnerships at Avalara, the largest indirect tax provider in the world. 3.5 years ago, I gave a presentation at Oxford on how companies would be able to represent themselves as self-auditing data sets in the future. Oxford ended up setting up a commission to take the idea global. And on that commission, I convened the Software and Operations Working Group. All right. Once again, February 2026, the enterprise software community finds itself at a fork in the road. Um, there's this fear that AI will be able to replace us. And if enterprise software just thinks about itself as task execution, maybe they're right because AI is really good at executing a task. But I think that that fundamentally misunderstands the role of enterprise software in a company. Enterprise software doesn't just execute tasks. The execution of those tasks is coherent and provable. And if you have the ability to gather all of your operations and the data associated with those operations into one data set, and that data is coherent and provable, that is not something that AI can compete with because AI in its current form is not coherent and provable. It is probabilistic. And AI will ultimately end up depending upon a coherent and provable data set in order to maximize its value. But in order to get your company to the point where your data is coherent and provable and you are maximizing the value of AI, you are going to have to change how you interact with your enterprise software providers, and you're going to have to change how you interact with your service providers. So 3.5 years ago, I started my presentation saying, so you want to understand a company as data. If you want to understand a company as data, the best way to think about it is it's a series of operations that are consequences of each other. And so what do I mean by that? If you tell me that you executed an e-commerce operation, I know you must have executed a payment operation and a shipping vendor operation and a tax calculation operation. And so an important takeaway is all important operational data intertwines with other operational data. And that means if you're given enough operational data on an organization, you create a data set that can audit itself. And so if you look at the total number of e-commerce transactions that you have, and it's 900,000, but you see that there were 900,004 tax calculations for individual e-commerce transactions, there has been a red flag. Where are those four extra e-commerce transactions that we calculated tax for, but we don't see in our e-commerce system? And then you can go look in the shipping and the payment data to figure out if the problem was on the tax calculation side or the e-commerce side. And this is something that AI loves to consume because the best thing AI is good at doing is understanding relationships. And the data that fundamentally sits underneath your company is data that is intimately related with each other. All right. So if all of your operational data intertwines with each other and all that operational data can tell the story of your company, which would be extraordinarily useful internally, but also extraordinarily useful externally, how do we get there? And I argue that in an AI-driven world, software systems will cease to be valuable if they can't give you the operational data for the operations they execute. And so that means that if Workday is doing your payroll, Workday has to give you payroll data in a standardized format that you can aggregate into your company's private database. And the same is true for SAP on what you're buying and what you're selling. The same is true for Stripe on what payments it's executing for you, or UPS on what shipments it's doing for you. And so this means that they need to change how they interact with you. And that change is enabling you to check a box inside your account that says, when you execute an operation for me, please log standard operational data to my company's private database. And when that data is written to your private database, which will be incredibly useful internally to your company, to make it useful external to your company, you need a digital signature written to a neutral digital signature repository. And so this creates a massive structural upgrade to enterprise software, because while enterprise uh, systems, which are deterministic systems, already encode real operational activity and real economic activity, if they want to become foundational in the AI era, they have to standardize their transactional outputs so AI is able to view companies as comparable entities. So if you're using Shopify to do sales, or you're using SAP Commerce to do sales, an e-commerce sale has to be written in the same transactional format, which means competitors are going to have to come together and standardize their transactional outputs. Secondly, a digital signature will have to be written by those software vendors to the third party of the customer's choice at the moment the data is written to their database. And what that digital signature will do is it will allow you to prove to an auditor or to an algorithm that the data that you have in your operational database is unmodified from when the system wrote it there originally. And so you are essentially allowing algorithms to uh, giving them a check so that they can trust the validity of your data, and take into consideration the reputation of whoever wrote that data to your database when they decide whether or not they want to trust that data or not. And so let me say that in a practical way. If UPS writes to your database that they delivered 100 packages to you, delivered 100 packages for you, and they write where they originated from and where they went to and how much it cost, everyone knows that UPS will not write that information to your database unless they think that they actually did that for you. And finally, um, this data naturally interlocks, but the software providers must understand that their data does interlock with other systems. And when they agree on a format that standardizes this operational data, they must maintain that interlocking nature so these databases are self-auditing. If they do those three things, which are relatively straightforward in the enterprise software space, those outputs now together become machine checkable evidence. And if you are an operational data set that is machine checkable, AI is not going to replace the systems that created that data. AI is going to spend all of its energy sitting on top of that data and building new value because it would have to completely re-engineer itself into deterministic systems to create data that you can trust at that level. And so, why would you want to become a self-auditing data set? And who are you going to give access to this data? That's really scary. Your operational data is the most sacred data in your company. It includes data on your employees, it includes data on your vendors, and it includes data on your customers. It's not a data set you will allow anyone direct access to. But you won't need to give people direct access to that data. You can find a trusted algorithm runner. Maybe it's SAP, maybe it ends up being Oracle, maybe it ends up being Bloomberg. But you just need to agree with your bank on what algorithms should be run against your data so that bank is able to get information that they know comes from your operational record, they know is unmodified from the original write. It intertwines with other operational data sets, and so uh, they're able to trust algorithms that can assess whether the data is coherent or not, and they're able to uh, allow you to maintain the privacy of your data while still working with you to agree upon what facts are extracted from that data so that they can give you a lower rate because they're able to reduce their perceived risk of loaning you money because they have far more information than they ever thought possible. JP Morgan has joined our commission because being able to understand a company's operational record would be a fascinating data set for a bank to contemplate. In insurance and risk assessment, Gallagher has joined the commission. Why? Insurance companies cannot insure supply chains. They only insure individual companies. But when you think about that from an insurance perspective, it's kind of crazy. A company's financial situation can often be related to its supply chain. A company's risk when it comes to um, all areas of insurance can often be impacted by its supply chain. But supply chains are too complicated and they're simply, the data doesn't exist to follow it. If a supply chain is able to represent itself as a self-auditing data set, meaning each individual company is storing its operational record in a standardized way with an associated digital signature, then you can use algorithms that allow all of those companies to keep their data private, but information can be extracted from each individual company, of course, with their agreement that allows you to view the entire supply chain as one data set. And so once again, you maintain privacy, you maintain GDPR compliance, but you're still able to extract information that people know is true because the data intertwines with data, so it's too complex to fake and too costly to fake, and that digital signature proves that the data is unmodified from that original write. Now, of course, internally, if you are a self-auditing data set, it's essentially the operations team's dream come true. You're always able to use AI to flag any inconsistencies that pop up internally and handle it relatively quickly. And you're able to drive massive amounts of optimization internally. But you can do that same thing with your supply chain partners, where now it's human to human contact and trust and assertion. This moves companies to being able to deal with each other as data sets and those data sets can prove what they're saying and informing you is true. And then, of course, Oxford's main interest in this project is around sustainability. It's been impossible to calculate carbon accurately for much the same reason the insurance company cannot insure supply chains. Nobody's able to extract carbon data from supply chains. Same is true for fair wages, same is true for slave labor. Once companies are able to represent themselves as auditable data sets, they can prove what they're buying, who it's coming from, what they're selling. They can prove what they're paying people, and you now are able to tackle sustainability issues people have historically thought of as unsolvable. All right. So I said in the beginning, this is forever going to change how you deal with your software providers. If I was a CIO, if I was a CFO, or if I was a CTO, in any of those situations, I would mandate for my company before any software provider or any service provider is allowed to answer one of our RFPs or or bid on or sell to us. I first want them to give us in writing what operations they intend to take over in regards to my company and what standardized outputs are they going to give us for those critical operations that they desire to take over. And only if I like the answer do they get to round two, which is demoing their product to our employees. And that is because if they do not standardize their operational data for key operations and allow us to secure that data with an associated digital signature stored externally, we have a black hole in the data required to run comprehensive AI internally, and we potentially could cease to be able to prove our operations to people externally in a manner that allows us to keep our data private. And so these software providers, thousands of them come together and knit together the operational reality of all of our customers, and their deterministic nature is key to that being done. It is something that AI is not close to being able to solve, but it only works if they standardize their data and they make it accessible to me. And if they're not thinking in those terms, they are companies that I do not want to do business with. And in the future, while probabilistic systems can assist, and at Avalara, we're massively investing in the ability of AI to speed up processes, help people understand what their tax requirements are, help them install our software far quicker than ever before. That is AI wrapping around the deterministic foundation of our company that ultimately is the system of record. AI will do amazing things for you, but only if built on a solid foundation. So on a my tech investment thesis, and this is the investments that you make in technology over the next 3 to 5 years, realize that AI accelerates execution massively, but its ability to do that actually puts a premium on evidence data, which means it makes your enterprise software companies actually more valuable. It does not make them less valuable. And it's because those enterprise software systems are the deterministic software that standardizes your operations into a data set, and they have the ability to sign transactional outputs so that AI can now operate on something that it can audit and trust. And if you are the first company that does this in your industry, if you are the first company that does this in your supply chain, you are going to be the company that defines the rails that others must plug into. So thank you. I hope this is informative. The work that we've done on this topic has been some of the most interesting work I've done in my career. I would love to talk with any of you on the topic. Once again, pop as many questions as you want in the Q&A, and hopefully we will talk one-on-one.